Did the European Union really have a directive that determined how curved a cucumber could be to be sold in the supermarket? And why is there an inscription in Cyrillic on the 50-euro banknote? Bulgaria is the only country in the Union with Cyrillic alphabet, but it hasn't yet adopted this currency. Today I want to tell you a little more about the European Union, about its history, and about the interesting decisions they make on some topics. Stay until the end to see the fun facts. Let's get started. Before that, quickly tell me in the comments which country or union you want me to make a video with facts about next. The European Union, dear friends, has a strange start. It all began in 1951 with the agreement between 6 countries to create a coal and steel trading community. It is safe to say that it all started for free trade with valuable raw materials. However, the EU hides a greater goal. The architects of the European Coal and Steel Community, or ECSC for short, wanted to prevent future wars on the old continent by economically binding countries and controlling key industries. In those years, Europe was still recovering from World War II and the horrors it caused. In 1951, this community included 6 countries: Belgium, Italy, France, Germany, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Therefore, today, they are considered the founders of the European Union. However, the term European Union was officially adopted only in 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty, that is 40 years later. Let's see what happened during that time and what the Union still called until then. After the creation of the coal and steel community, the countries realized that economically, other industries and goods could also enter the agreement and everyone would earn more. So they decided to create a common market and easier customs controls. In this way, the European Economic Community, or the EEC, was born. The goal was the trade integration of all industries and an absolute customs union without tariffs. Thus, trade between the 6 member states was unleashed and began to take off towards a very serious upswing. When the surrounding countries saw the prosperity of the community, they expressed a desire to join it. So, in 1973, a historic moment occurred, the first enlargement of the EU. Denmark, Ireland, and the United Kingdom joined the community, and thus the member states became 9. Remember that in those years, the European Union was only a community with economic goals, without common laws or justice. These things come shortly after the so-called Southern Enlargement in the 80s, when the Greeks were accepted, and 5 years after them, Spain and Portugal. After the number of countries swelled to 12, and with nations like the Greeks and the Spaniards, who were a little different, it was time for more serious regulations. Thus, in 1992, the European Union was officially born, bringing new forms of cooperation, but also regulations in areas such as defense, justice, and home affairs. After the powerful economic rise of the 12, the idea of eliminating another trade inconvenience, the different currencies, was born. The Union begins to develop a single currency, which today, of course, we all know as the euro. In 1999, 11 members of the Union officially adopt the euro, and 3 years later, they finally break with their own currencies. The Germans suffered terribly for their Deutsche Mark, the French for the franc. But this is the future. Bulgaria and Romania are part of the so-called expansion of the Union to the east. First, in 2004, as many as 10 countries joined the EU. Countries not only join, but also leave it. I am sure you have heard of Brexit, but did you know that there are 2 more? In 1962, Algeria gained independence from France and thus left the community. In 1979, Greenland began to govern itself and broke away from Denmark, so it is out too. The most famous case, however, remains that of the United Kingdom and the so-called Brexit in 2020. Any member state can leave the Union if they wish so. Yes, the procedure is extremely complicated and takes at least 2 years, but no one is tied down. I give an example again with Great Britain. By the way, they were twice rejected from joining the Union in the 60s by the famous Frenchman Charles de Gaulle, but in 2016, after a referendum, they decided to break away. 4 years later, this became a fact, and the documents were again signed by a Frenchman by 2024. The member states of the Union currently are 27, and for the moment, this is the largest political and economic union in the world, which has ensured peace on the old continent, or at least on the territory of the member states for 70 years. The last to join the European Union was Croatia in 2013. The EU currently has a territory of 4.2,300,000 square kilometers, which, if it were a country, would rank 7th in the world by this indicator, slightly behind Australia. The population of the Union is about 447 million people, which means that only China and India beat it in this category. The official languages of the European Union are 24, but only 3 alphabet systems are used: Latin, Greek, and Cyrillic. That is why the new Euro banknotes have an inscription in Bulgarian. When I mention the banknotes, some of you must have noticed the bridges on them. They are not real bridges, but invented so that there are no angry states. However, the Dutch decided to build many similar to these bridges, to be one step ahead, and say that the bridges on the banknotes are Dutch. Officially, the European Union does not have a capital, although we all know Brussels to serve as such. It is more like a headquarters. The European Commission, the Council, and the European Parliament are all located there. Its main sessions, however, are held in Strasbourg, France. The flag of the Union has 12 stars, arranged in a circle on a blue background. Many people believe that the number of stars symbolizes the 12 countries when the Maastricht Treaty was signed. But this has not been confirmed. The 12 stars are usually considered a symbol of unity and perfection. 12 months in the year, 12 apostles, 12 zodiac signs. The European Union also has its own anthem, Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, written in 1843. Interestingly, the anthem has no official words in order to avoid linguistic and cultural differences. Did you know that the euro is used in 20 of the 27 member states of the Union, but also in other countries outside of it? These include Andorra, Monaco, San Marino, and the Vatican. It is also the official currency in Montenegro and Kosovo, although the latter is only partially recognized as a separate country. Europe's Day is celebrated on 9th May each year in honor of the Robert Schuman Declaration of 1950, which laid the foundations for the creation of the European coal and steel community. Did you know that the EU received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2012 for its contribution to peace? After all, the motto of the Union is United in Diversity. That's how we got to the middle. Give a thumbs up in support, and let's continue with more interesting facts about the European Union. Every year, 2 European cities are chosen as capitals of culture. This tradition was started in 1985, in order to promote cultural diversity and, of course, to increase tourism. The longest meeting of EU leaders lasted 90 hours or 4 days, from July 17th to 21st, 2020. They discussed the multi-year financial plan of the post-COVID recovery fund. The European Union is the only supranational organization in the whole world whose representatives in parliament are elected directly by the people. The first such elections were held in 1979. We have all heard about the strict European regulations, including a famous directive determining the permissible curvature of cucumbers. Fortunately, it was repealed in 2009. But it remains as an example of the absurdly strict laws. Cyprus and Ireland, which are part of the EU, are not in Schengen, which allows free travel between some countries. On the other hand, Norway and Switzerland, which are not in the EU, are part of the Schengen area. Do you know what is the largest city in the European Union, which is not the capital? Write a comment with your guess. I will tell you this now. It is Hamburg in Germany with its 1.8 million inhabitants. France and Spain are the most visited countries by tourists in the European Union. In 2023, the French even blew away the pre-COVID times and hit 100 million tourists, which is a record. Some countries, by the way, still cannot reach the numbers from before 2020. In the European Parliament, you can safely speak in your mother tongue and everyone there will understand you. That is thanks to 430 full-time translators and another 800 on call take care of it. Interpreters are tasked with live translation, which is the most complex. One of the most successful EU programs is, of course, Erasmus. Since its inception in 1987, over 10 million students have gone on exchange to study in a foreign member state. The program aims to improve the quality of higher education in the Union. Did you know that as citizens of the European Union, we have the right to be forgotten? If your personal data has been used unlawfully somewhere, you can ask for it to be completely erased. This, of course, most often applies to Google, but also to other data controllers. The European Union is the first body in history to introduce regulation for cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence. As it progresses, we will certainly see many more rules, because otherwise it will become scary. The EU is committed to Europe being the first climate-neutral entire continent by 2050 with zero net greenhouse gas emissions. That is why you have probably heard that the first harmful emissions market is also being introduced. Imagine you have an annual greenhouse gas quota, and if you exceed it, you will have to buy a new one. This is part of the so-called Green Deal, which has also reached many countries. Generally speaking, the more we pollute, the more we will pay. The European Union does not have its own army or defense body. Each country is obliged to ensure one by encouraging cooperation. However, there is the NATO military alliance, in which most member states participate. The freedom of every citizen to work in the European Union without a visa is a two-sided problem. For poorer countries, it gives people the opportunity for higher income in another member state of the Union, but on the other hand, it drains quality labor and business suffers. The EU has faced several migration crises in recent years, which has led to tension between member states. Some countries simply refuse to accept refugees, leaving others to bear the brunt. This, as you can imagine, undermines solidarity in the Union. The European Union has been criticized for excessive freedom regarding gender reassignment and choice, especially imposing it on our children. In the last elections, this dissatisfaction was shown, among other things, after politics in many member states shifted seriously to the right. Did you know that Bulgaria is the oldest member state by name in the European Union? While many countries in Europe have changed their names over the years, Bulgaria has remained the same since its creation in 681. Turkey, dear friends, is the oldest candidate for the European Union. It applied for membership back in 1987, when the European Union was still a community. However, due to religious differences and values, there has been no significant progress to date. Another well-known candidate country is North Macedonia, which is being stopped by Greece and Bulgaria due to the appropriation and substitution of history. Separately, the Macedonian language should be recognized as a dialect of Bulgarian and a few more historical problems. The European Union has its own space program, as well as positioning satellites called Galileo. They are something like an alternative to our so-called GPS. They were launched in 2016 and are known to be more accurate than the American ones. The smallest member state of the Union is Malta, with its 316 square kilometers. The largest is France, with 638,000 square kilometers. But this number also includes some overseas territories. The European Union also has its own court. For example, if France has a problem with Germany, instead of attacking militarily, those countries sue each other in the EU court. We conclude with the fact that each member state of the Union has sacrificed its sovereignty for the common good. Rich countries, such as France and Germany, contribute more funds to the Union, and poor countries like Bulgaria and Romania receive more, respectively. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to watch other interesting things, click here. Thank you for being with me. Bye, and see you soon.